Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast. Wine, conversation, and smooth jazz.
Did you just make that up, or have you been
I thought
practicing?
of it the other day and wrote it down. I thought that'd be a funny way to start a podcast.
You know.
I don't even drink wine or have conversations.
Or listen to smooth
Not
jazz.
the smooth. I don't really like the smooth kind of jazz. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic.
And this is really a podcast about...
This is a podcast in which we discuss things of importance.
things that matter, things that you don't want to think about, but you should think about. And it also helps us figure out what we think about things. And this week, we're going to figure out what we think about the concept of respect.
Respect. In what way, Michael?
Well, I don't know. Respect for other people, respect for yourself, authority, respect for this podcast and its audience. The sort of respect between peers, I guess, and, the respect of an artist for their audience, things like that. I think it's quite interesting.
Mutual respect. Respect is an interesting concept, I think. We often push down people's throats as a thing that they must have, when actually, possibly, it should be earned. Discuss.
Well, earning respect.
Earning respect.
Earning and losing and, changing in levels of respect. I'm sure that's open to something. Let's get into it. How are you doing, Ivanka?
I am very tired.
Oh, well.
Which
Even
bodes
though
well.
You're kind of on holiday, though.
I'm sort of on holiday, but not really. So I'm
what's your
in my
excuse?
second home. Me with my first world problems. It's Sutivan, Croatia. We arrived here on Monday night, having driven across Europe.
It's now Friday.
We drove across many countries in Europe, which I really enjoy, and it was a very smooth, happy journey, but it is a little bit tiring just driving for 3 days, or travelling is sort of weirdly tiring. I'm not entirely sure why.
Do you know, I checked, Sharon and I kind of were talking about maybe going to, living in Berlin and in our heads it was like, well, that's because it's sort of closer to Milan where her parents are as well. But then I actually looked on a map yesterday and it's like, if anything, further than London. Berlin is further than London from Milan, which Europe's quite big, isn't it? Germany's very big.
Germany's very big, but I mean, we were driving through, it went a different route this time. I mean, there are it's approximately 1,300 miles from Brighton to Sutivan, one way or the other, give or take, but there are some variations you can take, and we decided to avoid the péages, the paid for motorways.
Péages in France.
In France, and we went
Cheeky.
via Belgium and Brussels, and we worked out that it takes about the same amount of time to drive to Brussels from Brighton as it does to get to Derbyshire, where Nick's parents live. So, even that includes the Eurotunnel. Went on the Eurotunnel this time, which I tend to favour a ferry, but we enjoyed it. This time it was smooth. But anyway, these are not the core bits of my conversation.
No. Why are you so tired?
These are my stories.
Lots of travelling.
So my stories travelling. But then we arrived and we've upcycled. So this house that we bought was full of old furniture. And we have upcycled and recycled and reused as much as physically possible. But we were short some beds. So I ordered some IKEA beds that every visitor has refused to put together, as far as I can tell. But somebody at some point had unpacked these 2 beds and mixed up all the pieces.
How many visitors are you getting in your second home?
I like to share the house, so
Who with? Just
everybody.
strangers?
The builder who did the work, he brought his family over there the long weekend here. My sister, my brother, everybody. I mean, if you're going to have my cousins, if you're going to have a seaside house, you might as well let people come and stay in it. Anyway, so I had 2 IKEA beds, all of which had drawers underneath them and were quite complicated, and somebody had mixed up all the pieces. So I had a giant puzzle to do for 2 days.
Okay. Before you could sleep.
Before anyone, because one of my mother's friends was coming to visit, so she needed a bed. So it's been very bed IKEA related. I was thinking how the German Autobahn is a good metaphor for libertarianism.
Okay.
Because of the unlimited speed of travel.
Yeah.
And how terrifying it is when people with powerful cars drive really, really fast and you've just got to get them out of their way. Because there's none of this like, oh, there's a car that's just of a reasonable speed driving ahead of me. No, they turn up, 200 kilometres an hour right behind you, indicating, flashing their lights, get out of my way. Then I've been reading rereading this book called Writing Down the Bones. Do you know it?
Nope.
It's kind of a how to get writing, or it's an encouragement to write. But it encompasses lots of Buddhist philosophy in it. It's a very enjoyable read, and I thought of you while I was reading it in the context of art and making things, and the fact that she talks about, and I think the context of this podcast for me, she has this metaphor really which talks about composting. So how you sort of fill your brain with things, and then it sort of it needs to be there for a bit, and it needs to be examined from different angles before good ideas pop out. But she talks about it in the context of composting and mulling things over and turning over the food that you've put inside your brain, so all the experiences you have, the things you read, and in the context of writing. Not that I'm a writer or anything, I just like reading things, but she talks about having a practice of spending time writing every day with no expectation on quality, except for the fact that she's specifically talking about improving your writing skills, so therefore talks about choosing a topic rather than that stream of consciousness writing, which is what the sort of artist's way journaling thing talks about. But I thought, actually, in a weird way, by doing our weekly podcast, I see this very much as my sort of composting day. I'm forced to think about things in a way that perhaps I wouldn't if I hadn't created this weekly slice of time in my life where I have to actually have come to some conclusions about
think of things to say.
One of the things this woman was talking about as well is like, the difference between somebody. There is this whole thing, like difference between somebody who wants to write and is a writer, is that they actually write things down instead of thinking about what they're going to write down. It's like, which I think is the.
I was talking about my that writing book a few months ago. But like it was to do with screenplays, and what stalled me out was like, okay, write a big list of things you just really want to see on screen, and I thought I had loads of those stored up, and I realised I didn't really have anything interesting at all stored up. I was very disappointed in myself. I thought, okay, well, I guess I need to sort of like build up some fuel for that. Otherwise, who cares? Well,
this is one of the things she talks about, is the fact that ideas you have when you're walking around, sitting down to write and trying to remember what you thought of when you were walking around is not the activity. You've got to forget that. You've got to sit down and start writing what you think of now, not trying to remember some random thought that existed in a moment. That's where the sort of Buddhism bit comes into it. It's a bit sort of flowing through you, not of you type philosophy. But so, Michael Forrest, how was your week?
We hid indoors for a couple of days while Notting Hill Carnival was on, because we're right on the edge of where that all goes off. But yeah, pretty uneventful from where we were. The main thing this week was last night I released a new app called Just Calories, which is a calorie counting app where you just don't even say what the food was. You just say whether it was good or bad and how much it was. And the idea being that you just keep it up. So it was a little idea, and it was something I wanted. And then I just thought, well, I might as well make this a real app, and then ended up spending way longer than I was planning to. But as of yesterday, I submitted it yesterday. It was reviewed and accepted overnight, and it's in the App Store now. So if you want to try out my app, it's on 99 cents or pence for the first month. So just, I'm going to link that. This is more of a, well, I guess if I have actually managed to make something in a week, then I'm just going to
I think you're allowed to plug it. Yeah. I think you're allowed to plug an app that you made.
So it now means I've got sort of 3 good self-tracking type apps. So one's a happiness tracking app, another one's a daily habit tracker. And now I've got this calorie counting thing. So I think that as a sort of trio of apps, I think that's quite a good suite to have. And that's what we're going to promote at a tech fair we're going to do in October as well. Also, I don't know. I had this thing of trying to watch this Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One, which is it's basically a big, expensive virtual reality film. Where everyone's sort of in this big game universe. But it's so, I was sitting there watching it, and Sharon was doing something else, and we were sitting there together, and I was realising that, usually when you watch a film together, there's a sort of shared experience element of it that you want the other person to be paying attention because you sort of want to refer back to that later, and, you're going to have your little things that you reference in future. But I noticed I wasn't really kind of nudging her very much to look at anything because it was nearly entirely made up of references to other things. So without really bringing very many of its own things. So it's all he rides around in a DeLorean, and another one's got an Akira motorbike, and there's an Iron Giant, and there's all this kind of pop culture reference, 80s pop culture stuff. But there was no shared experience in it because didn't seem to be very much anything novel in it. So it's a weird effect.
I've not even heard of it.
Well, I think Steven Spielberg directed just enough of it for it to have Spielberg written on it. But it is kind of nonsense, really. I still haven't got to the end of it. It was quite nice to watch yesterday, just with the sound down and just in the background. But as a kind of foreground film, bit pointless. But yeah, pretty much just been hammering away at the little bits and pieces and slowly winning. Managed to get my bank account connected as well to ClearBooks.
Congratulations.
Let's talk about respect.
A mutual friend of ours who's an artist, a painter type artist, who I've known since I was quite a young lass. So 12, 13, he was friends with my father. A number of years later, let's say when I was in my 20s, we've had some good rows occasionally. And he phoned me up one day and was yelling at me about something, and I yelled back. And he talked to me, and he said, "You should show more respect." And I was like, "Respect needs to be earned." And then he went, "You're nothing but a Balkan witch." Because I laughed at him. And then, so that was the original name of my blog, Balkan Witch.
There you go. Should respect be earned then? What if, there's something to be said for kind of starting out, giving some, you shouldn't start off from zero, though, right? When you meet someone. No,
but I think there's a difference between manners and politeness and respect.
Right.
So, for example, I will, if there is somebody older than me, particularly an old person, I might offer to carry their bag, I might offer them a seat, I might do various things like that. And all I'm really respecting is their age. That doesn't really mean I want to hear their opinions about politics or anything else, but I respect the fact that their body might ache and they may need a seat more than me or something like that. I mean, my father, on the long list of sayings from my father, there's also this, even a calf, if it went to university, would leave a bull. And, the implication being that, just because years have passed doesn't mean you've learnt anything. So I think age alone does not earn you respect. I don't know.
So what does it take to earn respect then? If not age?
Well, I think it's mutual. I mean, if I'm to respect your opinion, you must respect mine, or at least respect my time in telling. I don't know. It's very difficult. Respect, I find. I have no respect for authority. It's like it's been a long-standing problem of mine, or strength. I don't know, where I'm just not very good with, having respect thrust upon me. You will respect my authority type thing. Though I expect respect. It's a tricky area for me. Respect is. How do you earn respect? Do you care?
I don't know, because I think about people that I respect. I can respect someone without necessarily liking what they do as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
I can sort of respect the work ethic. I can respect that they have a certain vision.
Respect is a word sort of thrown at you when you're a kid, isn't it? Or as you go through school, you're supposed to respect your teachers and respect these. But that assumes that you're not allowed to question them. And I think I can be very polite. And maybe that is respect. I don't know what the definition of respect is. I think in my head, respect, when it's thrown at me, is that I must listen to somebody's opinion and accept it.
Does it mean accept?
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about accepting something or doing as you're told, or I don't know. Because I think I do have this. I've always, from when I was very little, had this "that's not fair" thing in my personality. Like, a teacher tells me to do something that I don't consider to be a good idea. And, or I think is nasty or rude. I think I associate respect with just politeness.
The dictionary.
Oh, go on, help me out.
In a low point for
our podcast.
I'm referring to it. But the dictionary, I'm looking at vocabulary.com because it was the first one that came up, but it said to think highly of.
Oh, to think highly.
Or regard highly or think much of, which, that's asking a lot, isn't it? Like, it's teachers, really. You must think highly of me. Right?
Yeah, I certainly was brought up not to shout at my teachers or be rude, or, I respected the sitting in class type, the rules. But I was always allowed to question them, but maybe schools, because then you get in the workplace and then you have a different sort of, you're like this sort of manager expecting. I think I don't expect respect from other people. I feel like I need to, in some way, show that I'm worthy of it.
There's so the sort of respectful way of, challenging someone's opinion versus the disrespectful way. I suppose, if you respect them, you're going to say, okay, I appreciate where you're coming from, and this is coming from a valid place, but here's what I think, and you're sort of trying to kind of add to their base of knowledge. Whereas if you sort of question someone you don't really feel respect for, it's more like it's like you're wasting my time because you haven't done your due diligence. You don't really know what you're talking about. You're not really qualified to do this. It's sort of it turns into that. So I think it is difficult when you're if I've put time in to form an opinion or to learn something or become good at it, then when somebody who hasn't put in that time and effort decides that they're going to, dismiss my thoughts, I find that almost impossible to deal with. And I think I think there is a gender thing for me in a workplace, for example. There is a thing where I often men, particularly older men, will talk down to me, which then makes me go for them because I don't see why I should tolerate it. If you see what and it's not even that assumes that I've thought about it. I don't think I do. I think I just go, right, attack is the best defense. Boom, no, you can't talk to me like that. So if I thought about it, there's a few times. There's one particular time that comes to mind where I really should have shut up. I
disagreed with somebody who I often disagreed with, who was in a position of authority. But there was one time when we were overheard. So I actually walked up to him in an open plan office and went, what the fuck was that? What did you just do? But I spoke to him like that. And he then rowed with me like we normally would, which behind closed doors was fine. Grab a meeting room, have a frank and open conversation. But when it was in an open plan office and we were overheard and then it was commented on, his ego took a hit.
Yeah.
That then took me months to recover from, because I'd undermined him. And, as the boss person, this is where I struggle with the respect thing. It's like, as the boss person, do I just blindly do what you ask me to do? Or did you hire me for my skills and therefore it's my job? It would be disrespectful of me not to question what you're asking me to do. And I think it's the latter. If you've hired me with my CV, with my experience, with my skills, and you expect me to simply execute your wishes, that's disrespectful to me. Yes. And if I just follow it, I'm actually not giving you your money's worth. I'm disrespecting you. I think that's how it works in my head.
If you have sort of put a company together and you're kind of running it and you've got a lot of things to think about and deal with, you're going to feel a bit upset if people don't give you a certain amount of respect, because it sort of means that they don't really understand how much you put into it. And I think that's the same as parents and children. It's like children don't really understand how much demand they're placing on their parents, do they?
No.
So that's what the respect needs to be for. So it's like, you don't understand yet that this doesn't all just happen. Like, I have to go and work, I have to earn this money, everything that I do, I have to kind of try and get right. Like, you can't just kind of be completely dismissive of me as a person, because as a parent, not that, I am one. That's where that comes from, isn't it? It's like, I have a lot of responsibilities and I'm looking after you. So please show me some gratitude for that.
So I agree with you on your parent analogy, because having a child, one of the first things it made me do was realise I was respect my mother more. I was like, well done. It's not and then, so there is that element, but also thinking when I've been in management positions, and I think broadly I try to hire people whose skills I respect, so therefore I do listen to what they have to say. But sometimes in the managery position, you have to make a decision. Somebody has to make a decision, and that's what your job is. And sometimes, you and I have had significant disagreements at work where it's like, where in the end I did have to resort to that, look, because I have asked you to, please. It's like yes, it doesn't entirely make sense, but there's other things that I'm having to deal with that you don't know, blah, blah. And then having to explain yourself all the time is quite difficult as well, because I think the authority is a shortcut to having to explain yourself.
Or explain yourself or persuade someone to do something.
Yeah, but it's also tiring having to explain. There is a bit of like, come on. Like, do I have to, if I just want us to make a cake, do I have to explain to you why we're making the cake and why we're choosing this cake? No, let's just make the cake. And so I think there's a bit of sometimes having to explain yourself takes time and energy that is not the time and energy. You'd rather put the time and energy into your idea or the things you want to make. So, I can understand, I can be sympathetic in the work environment, but, to the sort of boss person, there's no need to be rude and hurtful.
Different people have a different baseline of how much there's their sort of minimum amount of respect. I think probably mine's a bit low. Like if I kind of lose respect for someone, I'm just like, just don't even talk to me. Which isn't very sustainable in workplace environments.
No.
And it often happens. But I think other people would give people respect for, being alive, feeding themselves. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I respect you up to a point, but, I'm kind of like, the cutoff point, I kind of should probably still be respecting people for all the things they are doing instead of just kind of going, nah, it's done.
Yeah.
You're lazy. I can't be bothered.
Yeah, I do have a similar, what I consider to be a negative personality trait, which is that I don't tend to view it as respect, but let's say there's some base values that are, as far as I'm concerned, completely different. So like, you know, if you've been working in a team and one person just isn't pulling their weight or they say something, it tends to be more value based. So I find out that they are, I don't know, pro-war was I just can't talk to them after that. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. I just don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm never ever sure if that's of any use to me as a personality trait. I don't know. I think it's not. You know, I try and battle against it. That's sort of like, whoa, we're so different. I don't understand how we can be friends.
Yeah, I think it's something that causes me problems, and just now talking about it, it's like, well, maybe I can give people respect for normal stuff. I don't only have to respect people for their special powers, and then maybe I'd get on with a lot more people.
I think what you said, like respect for people for things that they are, rather than disrespecting them for the things that they're not. So, you know, sort of like a counting your blessings activity, but for other people. So instead of going, right, I'm very lucky, I'm healthy, I've got a child, I've got a husband, blah, 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 doing my counting my blessings, maybe count the positives instead of be focusing on the negatives about people. Might be helpful. I don't know. There's all sorts of things wrapped up in this authority business that I think are not healthy. And again, I'm conflating authority and respect. But I remember talking to somebody about Tony Blair, and I was going, he's a war criminal, you know, he needs to be traipsed up in front of the Hague and judged. And they were like, yes, but you can't say that about our Prime Minister. He's the Prime Minister. I was like, he can go and... he works for me. You know, respect needs to be properly placed. And I think this idea that somebody in authority is worthy of respect is conflating two things. Even with your parents, you know, yes, absolutely love them and respect them for all the work they've done for you. But some of the things our parents tell us are wrong. You know, true. They are outmoded, they are outdated, they are not appropriate to us. That doesn't mean you've got to dismiss them, everything they ever did, but, you know, put it in context, you know, what they're... There's loads of stuff that my mum used to do, the way she raised us, that just we know now are not the best way, or that it's not the current thinking on child rearing or whatever. I have a lot of respect for my mum. She's cool. There is but again, I think I'm bringing sort of manners into it and what you can say. So, for example, Theresa May, we can respect her for, you know, being driven enough, rising to the position of being a prime minister, and that deserves respect. And
being the only one to actually step up and have a go.
Yeah, exactly. She's actually being quite the grown-up at the moment.
Yes.
But at the same time, a lot of the things that she does, the way she goes about it, you know, it's like, well... no. But I don't think I disrespect her. I just don't agree with her policies. I think she's wrong. I think she's but again, I don't think... I'm thinking as well, the work environments of people that I'm thinking about people that I'm still friends with, I still talk to, I still look forward to working with. They are the people that in a work context have earned my respect, and that respect remains. And it's there, and... I don't hear from them for a while, and I hear from them, and I'm excited to hear from them because I think something interesting is going to happen. I'm going to have an interesting conversation, blah, blah, blah. But those are people generally that have shown me some respect professionally. I think I find it very hard where people... I'm trying to think of specific examples, but like the most banal example is when I used to fix tellies and videos when I was at university. That was my Saturday job. And I turned up to this one person's house, and he just looked at me and went, you're not a man. I was like, no, you are absolutely right. I am not. It's like, you know, when people, I've had lecturers at university speak, we were doing a team project and one of them spoke to another of the, I was electronic engineering, so there's a man on my team. And I went, oh, she's quite good. I'm like, how do you it's like, well, why do you say it with surprise? You know, that's the thing that I think most irritates me. So I think I have got this little bit, well, I've got a chip on my shoulder for sure, or maybe it's got smaller, but it's like, I'm not showing anyone respect until they show me, you know, it's a bit of a, I'm expecting no respect. People in a work environment often applaud me for saying something in a meeting in front of somebody in a position of authority that no one else dared say. And I don't see that. And I joke and I say, you know, I'll say, well, they need to understand that I have no respect for authority, which is not strictly true. But I just can't be sitting by and listening to nonsense.
A goal of mine for a long time when I was younger as an artist was not necessarily to be famous or rich from it, but my goal was to be respected by my peers, by other artists, by other musicians. And I guess, I think I've achieved that like quite a while ago now. I sort of feel like the people I respect what I'm doing, and almost it's like I'm trying to kind of find people at a sort of higher level that to try and make them respect what I'm doing, or just to try and kind of get my skills up to a level that they can respect what I'm doing. But yeah, respect as a sort of goal. When you start something new, when you try at something new, you're not going to really garner any respect for a while, because you have to work very hard to earn it, just in terms of developing a craft.
But then you can certainly be respected for working hard.
Yes.
And I think finding the peers that you wish to judge you and you wish to be respected by is quite an interesting activity as well.
Yeah.
You know, like that whole, one of the things that, and I think this is often talked about with sort of gender differences in the workplace, of women having to prove themselves more or being caring more about what other people think of them. I think being more selective about who you want to think well of you is either, maybe it's age, maybe gender, I don't know. But I've become better at being more discerning of. But you know, one of the reasons that interview thing. Do you remember I told you that story of walking into an interview and being interviewed as though I was a junior when I wasn't. I think ultimately what really upset me about that was not that they didn't like me or didn't want to work with me. It was that they didn't show the skills I had. I wanted them to have a good opinion of my skills, even if they didn't like me. And I had nothing to judge their skills on. You know, one could argue that their interview skills and their approach to hiring and all these things didn't warrant the respect. So therefore, you can flip these things and sort of go, why should I care what they think? But I do care. So therefore, and I think, do you want to...
Yeah, and I think that there's definitely, women definitely have to work harder to be respected in the workplace. I don't think there's any doubt about that, is there? I think that's controversial. And I probably, checking my privilege, I probably vastly underestimate how much automatic respect I get for just being white and having a beard. It's kind of like immediate, just respect me. Look, I've got this little beard thing. Like...
That's why I'm looking forward to having more grey hairs, you see.
Right.
It's like, come on, people, look.
It's kind of, it's like, but, I've constantly got this conflict of wanting to look older to be respected in the workplace, but look younger to be respected as a musician.
Yeah.
Stupid. Well, not that I really respect anyone because they're young, that's madness, but it's sort of like it is always the conversation when it comes to artists, it's always, and they're only 17.
Yeah,
it's
but
just always the first fucking thing people say.
But that's the true. That's true. Of so many things, like, oh, they did it, and they were only this young, and they were only this, and it's always it's like, oh, he's only 39, and he's the CEO of this, and he's done that, and he's done that. I was like, well, you know, he hasn't lived my life. Yeah, it's sort of like, I've always wondered whether at some age people would start listening to my sage advice, and in a way that requires less proving. That I know what I'm talking about.
Accept what you say without...
Just respect my authority.
It seems like a lot of very popular things don't have a lot of respect for their audience.
Like what?
I don't know, like X Factor. Not that I watch X Factor or big. Do you not feel like there's this phenomenon of like massively oversimplifying stuff for kind of mass appeal?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, we have discussed this, the sort of like the acceptance of ignorance as being a bonus.
The acceptance.
You know, like being ignorant is not frowned upon and something that you should rectify, but rather something that we laugh at. You get money, and then you get to be famous for being ignorant. I'm not sure that respect comes into something like X Factor anywhere. Like the thing that makes it unwatchable for me are the things like the fact that they have these people that they laugh at that can't sing, and then they, I just don't like
part
that.
Of the entertainment. And there's a lot of entertainment. Also, just like I clicked on something on the Apple TV yesterday to watch, and it was on the sort of Channel 4 app, and then it said advert 1 of 6, and I was like, nope. This is not worth my time at this point. It was Big Brother. I was like, okay, let's see who's on Celebrity Big Brother. No, I'm not sitting through 6 adverts to then fast forward through this thing to see who's on it. Sorry, my time, you're just not... It's like people don't have respect for their own time or their life or their existence when they'll just sit through advert after advert that they've seen 80 times already. That's a sorry state of affairs. Sometimes I think I kind of want to shake people and go, turn this off. This is so disrespectful to you. And don't accept this as a baseline of your experience because you're pissing your life away.
Well, there is definitely that sort of and I think there's something as well about your respecting your surroundings and your environment, about sort of the noise and that you met. Like they're just like, it's some of this TV stuff, and it's just like pollution. But it's just it's no better. There's nothing interesting in it. There's nothing to learn. It's just hypnosis.
Here are 5 adverts for almost identical products. Cool. Thanks. That was useful. This is definitely a good use of my life. Or just, like people in the park. Like there's a good little Limmy sketch where it's like someone like just people in the park that aren't respecting the fact that there are other people in the park, through like dancing about, putting some obnoxious music on, smoking, doing all these things that are like, come on. There's that sort of, like righteous anger at people just being completely inconsiderate and just not respecting any. It's just, and it comes out like you have no respect for your surroundings or anything else that's going on.
And it's at lots of different levels. It's somebody, when we were talking about it earlier, I was thinking about, the person that gets on the carriage on the train and then has a conversation at full volume.
Or an onion sandwich.
Oh, yeah, it's just something that just got like, oh, come on, just pause me. It's not because it's not allowed, and it's not because of anything. It's just because it's just not nice for everybody else around you, or the people who ride their. But I was riding my bicycle once behind this woman she was kind of riding in a oblivious bubble of obliviousness. like how many people, it's almost like a sketch where behind her things were crashing and she was just riding along, totally oblivious to anything or anyone. And it's like, I just think, I think that's disrespectful to other human beings and their lives. Right.
Here's something that annoys me cycling. It's like, so there's someone ahead of you who's going slower than you. So you overtake them, but then there's like a traffic light. And then they like come on the outside of you to go ahead of you again. And you're just like, why are you doing this? I'm just going to have to overtake you again because you're going slower than me. Do you not understand that you're going slower than I'm going to go? Like, and it's just like, it's just really annoying. And I'd always kind of like go, okay, I think this guy's, he's got all his full gear on his helmet. I think he's going to be sort of shooting off. But if it's someone on a Boris bike and then they kind of get in front of you and it's like, why would you do this? Go behind me.
Take your turn. Know your place.
But, come on. Just have some awareness.
Yeah, but I think if people talk about things like, they use words like respect, it gets used too much as a word, I think.
Does it?
I think so, because they talk about respecting your bodies and they talk about it's just used. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be given, but it's quite a special thing to give somebody. What was that definition? To have
think highly
of somebody. I think well of many people, and my assumption with everybody is that they are going to be good at what they do. And then I tend to, my starting point, because I'm an optimist or whatever, is that okay, let's have it. And
so respect comes relative to your expectations to a certain. But just going back to my audience thing again, I think like this renaissance of kind of amazing TV that's come out the last sort of 15, 20 years is partly from, instead of having no respect for the audience, having respect that the audience is going to remember something that someone did or said a few episodes ago without having to like restate it. Like that's, I think, led to much deeper and richer and more interesting content and I guess, it's a decision. Okay, we're going to think highly of our audience instead of assuming they're all dribbling dullards. And it just leads to better stuff.
Yeah, I think one of the things I struggle with when I've been in America watching TV is the sort of the incessant breaks and then the recap. Something that happened 10 minutes ago on this thing. It's like, come on.
Ridiculous. I was there. I was right there. I was just there. And then when you watch it without the adverts in it, it's like, what is happening? Which is kind of why I couldn't quite get into Arrested Development initially, because it just had that tone of the sort of shows that I just avoided so much.
We watched Anthony Bourdain the other night, and that had so many, it was on Netflix, there were so many bits in it that were obviously where the ad would have been. I think this sort of, aside from the holding in high esteem, there's this sort of, I think, respecting people for who they are. But Anthony Bourdain made me think of this because he, his TV shows, he travelled the world. He was not laughing at anyone or mocking anyone. He approached it with an open mind. It's like, right, okay, this is what we're having, is it? Okay, great. It's not, and I think perhaps, to move away from the dictionary definition of respect.
Please.
Is just to sort of go, just because you're not like me doesn't mean you're bad or wrong, which I think is quite a nice way to approach life and travel and
behave respectfully. Yeah, just by default is a good way to be, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think, and this is where I think that's my manners confusion. But it's like this morning I was doing my my walk up and down the beach picking up thing. It's like the number of cigarette butts that I picked up, and some things you can understand, like a broken hair bobble fell out of somebody's hair, obviously when they were swimming. You might not know that happened, you might not have found it. I've lost an earring on that beach. If anyone finds it, it's gold and it's got a tiny little diamond in it. Anyway, but it's like, okay, smoke, but you have to put your fag butts on the beach, really? It's not, there's a bin just above it. It's not far to the bin.
Saw the guys in the people in the bush, the carnival cleanup crew yesterday morning, still going, like rooting through all the bushes. People just, carnival days, it's just like everything everywhere.
But yeah, I mean, in some ways, I'm sympathetic to those, because Brighton obviously gets a beating on a sunny bank holiday, and it gets filled with rubbish, and it's almost impossible to put out enough bins. And if people were to take things, where are they going to take them to? Because all the bins just end up overflowing. So I can understand that there's this sort of unpredicted volume use that makes it impossible. But in a sleepy village, like, there's really no excuse. And they've obviously put in quite a lot of effort here, because even the wilder beaches there are bins that get collected. So, you're going off the asphalt, you're going further into beaches that are unkept, but they've still got bins, and then they're still covered in rubbish.
President Donald Trump. Is there anything about him you can respect? And should we respect anything about him? Because, I mean, the one thing you can... I don't even respect this, but the one thing you have to give him is that he's very good at getting people's attention and saying the sorts of things that people will talk about. He's very good at being famous. If that's something to respect him for, is very much debatable. It's
very difficult. I think when we did briefly discuss his tweet and my reply, I put effort into making sure that there was nothing overtly disrespectful or rude about the reply that I gave, but this is respect for authority, like, he is the president of the United States of America. And
also the stage you're on is tens of hundreds of thousands of people you're in front of. So it's not just between two people in a room. You're on Twitter, on the internet, and your thing's gone viral, and,
Yeah. And I'm sure there's people who read it who thought that I should have been more, that I should have been ruder, that I should have been more aggressive.
Me included. I was like, why is she being so respectful to this piece of...
But then... I'm not sure that whilst there's been many viral tweets, I'm not sure how many of them got international press coverage. There was nothing unprintable. It was polite.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was news friendly, it was family friendly, it was, it was and even the use of the word may I suggest, I see that as a highly, what's the word, tugging the forelock kind of choice of words.
Right, subordinate.
Sort of like subordinate. It's like, I am in a lower position than you, therefore I'm
subservient.
Subservient, exactly. It's all those words that aren't really me. But by using that sort of says, yes, you're in a position that is higher than me, but by the way, you've got the power to influence policy to actually reverse climate change, or at least stop it. Sorry, not reverse, we're beyond that, but to stop it getting any worse. And you're not going to use your power. So I'm not dissing your position in society, but I am going to diss your position on your policy position. There was definitely one woman who said, I'm a Trump supporter, but I have to give you the fact that was a very polite and respectful response. Not that I'm sure she may have put, and that was another thing. I wasn't just talking to him. I thought, if I'm polite to him, then maybe instead of getting attacked, which I did get a bit of, but not excessively, people might actually, think about it.
Yeah. If you want to change people's minds, and we talked about this on the day, like, if you just sort of go in disrespectful, then you're not only disrespecting Trump, you're disrespecting every single person that voted for him, that still likes him. And then it's like, well, then they're going to be like, well, why should I listen to you when you have no respect for me?
Yeah. And I was like, do I go for, I probably could have come up with some witty that would have made people I know and know me chuckle. But I think that's not really what I was trying to get at.
It's not persuasive.
It's not persuasive. Nobody likes, one of my friends at university used to say to me, it's like, nobody likes a smart ass. So, it wasn't the moment to just be a smart ass.
I think people like a funny smart ass.
Yeah, they do.
But then it's still like, if it's at someone's expense, then it's the wrong sort of
I know, and in a way, it's like, how clever is he?
It's very hard to tell, isn't it?
How educated is he? Is he playing a game?
It's very hard to tell.
Very hard to tell whether
It's like he just plays the id. He plays the ego. The super ego is up for debate. Is what's happening there?
Yeah, what is going on? So it's like.
But in terms of respect, I mean, you have no choice but to give him a certain amount of respect.
Yeah.
And if you don't give people that voted for him a certain amount of respect, you have then no hope of ever getting into some sort of conversation with them where you can change their minds. So I guess on that level, it comes back to, okay, well, I need to figure out how to respect you, even though you've voted for Trump.
I think, I've previously talked about the fact that if you've got nothing in common with somebody to start the conversation, then you've got nowhere to go. But I think actually showing somebody mutual respect is a starting point for conversation.
It's the only way to, even if you just finding a way to respect someone. Yeah. I personally, my advice to myself this week: work harder on finding ways that you do respect other people instead of sort of like just dismissing them after the higher level things that you don't respect.
Yeah.
And I realised I had a sort of stoned realisation a few years ago, which was I love people's craziness. And actually everyone's crazy, so that means I can love everyone.
It's true. Yeah, why not?
Thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you for listening.
If you like the podcast, go to grandpodcast.com. Have a look in the notes for our links. We put all that down, and that's in grandpodcast.com/library. You can email us hello@grandpodcast.com. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram, find all those links on the website and in the notes. Where can people find you, Ivanka?
You can find me at Ivanka on Twitter.
You can find me at michaelforestmusic.com. Can people do anything to help us if they want?
What would be really, really nice would be if you would tell your friends, maybe even subscribe them on their phone, just, so it's there. So it's a beautiful gift, a pleasant surprise. Perhaps choose your favourite episode maybe and share it with them.
Just send them to the first one, because I think it's quite a good one for listening to in linear order as well. Yeah,
you can. It helps you maybe understand some of the context of us and why we think the way we do. Mm-hmm. And write us some reviews on iTunes. That's also nice, because then iTunes might favour us more and tell more people about us, because, we have to keep that robots happy.
Yes, Apple Podcasts. All right, and also check out my app, Just Calories. Search for that on the App Store. iOS only, I'm afraid. But we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.